I'm Allister D'Souza in Washington, D.C. Here are the top stories that made headlines this week in the United States.
Like last night, I wasn't happy with it, and we're in the midst of talking peace, and missiles were fired, and I was not happy with it. That's what I...
U.S. President Trump saying he is not happy about Russian strikes on Kyiv. Thursday's attack on the Russian capital was the deadliest since last July. President Trump's comments after a rare criticism of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump appears to be increasingly frustrated over peace talks having made little progress. Amid the tariff wars, President Trump says Chinese President Xi called him, but Beijing says the U.S. should stop creating confusion. No tariff talks are taking place. Meanwhile, as U.S. Vice President Vance wrapped up his India visit, the U.S. Treasury Secretary is said to have told journalists India may be the first to sign a trade deal with Washington, a move that could avoid 26% tariffs. Billionaire Elon Musk says he will step back from Doge, which is Trump's cost-cutting team. Musk's comments come as his EV maker Tesla saw earnings plunge with a 71% drop in profits. No word on when Musk will actually leave or what happens to Doge thereafter.
Years from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter.
Pete Hegseth in the line of fire. Several media reports this week saying the U.S. defense chief shared sensitive information of a U.S. military strike on yet another Signal group chat. This chat included his wife, brother, and lawyer. Meanwhile, other reports say Hegseth had the unclassified messaging app Signal installed on a computer in his Pentagon office. The head of the U.S. National Science Foundation has quit. Sethuraman Panchanathan was selected by Trump for the role during his first term. The agency is tasked with advancing scientific discoveries and has seen pressure from Doge to cut spending. Panchanathan says he has done all he could at the department. Our top story, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is in Moscow, where he has met Vladimir Putin. Witkoff has previously held 3 very long meetings with the Russian president. This is his 4th. The latest meeting comes after Russia's attack on Ukraine's capital that killed 12 people and injured nearly 100. It also comes as U.S. President Trump lashed out at Putin. In a post on social media, Trump wrote, "Vladimir, stop." Let's get you more on this story. We're now joined by Alexandra Sharp. She is with Foreign Policy magazine. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Before we hear from you, let's listen to what President Trump had to say.
Putting a lot of pressure. You don't know what pressure I'm putting on Russia. They're dealing. You have no idea what pressure I'm putting on Russia. We're putting a lot of pressure.
Can you maybe tell us that?
We're putting a lot of pressure on Russia. And Russia knows that, and some people that are close to it know, or he wouldn't be talking right now. The Prime Minister understands that better than anybody. He wouldn't be talking right now. He's talking, and we're putting a lot of pressure. I think he wants to make a deal. We're going to find out very soon.
Let's head across now to Alexandra Sharp. She is with Foreign Policy magazine. Alexandra, thanks very much for your time here this morning on Washington Watch. Now, President Trump is vocally slamming Putin. The administration has also expressed frustration over peace talks, saying they could pull out. Now, Trump's got too much really at stake here. So what's the real likelihood, do you think, of the U.S. actually pulling the plug?
I think that's quite unlikely at this point. You're looking at U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's comments last week saying that the United States would move on from Russia-Ukraine peace talks if a deal isn't clinched in the coming days. But then we have Trump literally today saying that there is no deadline for securing a peace deal, though he does want that to occur as soon as possible. We also have, as you mentioned, Steve Witkoff in Moscow today for talks with Putin. These all demonstrate that Trump is adamant that securing a Russia-Ukraine peace deal is necessary and that the United States wants to be part of that deal. That's important for not just the international community, but for his candidacy, for his presidency, excuse me. And that is because he repeatedly said that he would end the Russia-Ukraine war within 24 hours. So there's a lot riding reputationally on that as well.
Yeah, he was just asked about that, and he said he was talking figuratively, not exactly literally, when he said he would end it in 24 hours. Now, Alexandra, let's look at the recent Paris talks. Reuters released details of the final offer from the US. It says that the US would recognize Russian control of Crimea. Zelensky has, as you know, repeatedly rejected that idea. What do you think? Can Washington really get Zelensky to comply on that front?
I think that's hard to say. As of right now, it's clear that any Russian ownership of Ukrainian occupied land is a red line for Kyiv. And Zelensky's adamant that that red line will remain that way. I think if there's a Russia-Ukraine peace deal that will occur, the United States are going to have to look at other negotiating tactics in order to get Ukraine to agree, potentially other levers that Zelensky is more likely to acquiesce on.
I know you mentioned about how this is a very important deal for President Trump now, but however, that said, could a peace deal be better accomplished without direct US involvement via the Europeans, for example?
Depends on who you ask, honestly. If you were to ask Russian President Vladimir Putin, the answer is the United States is vital to secure a deal. And that's because Washington has much more publicly, certainly more than past administrations, parroted or agreed with Kremlin talking points. However, if you were to ask Zelensky, Europe is more concerned with European security, securing a security guarantee for Ukraine to ensure that no Russian aggression occurs in the future, and has more of the Ukrainian desires at stake and is listening more clearly to Kyiv's wants. So in that case, possibly creating a Russia-Ukraine peace deal that Zelensky will agree to may be more inclined for European control and leadership than the U.S.
All right, Alexandra, now Trump has also said that negotiating with Zelensky has been harder than with Russia. According to you, where do you think that these, so to speak, roadblocks to peace lie? Is it with Russia or Ukraine?
I think it honestly lies with both. The war was started by Russia invading Ukraine. A lot rides on Russia's ability to agree to stop attacking civilian targets. There's also the fault line of NATO membership. Ukraine adamant that NATO membership for Kyiv is vital to Ukraine's security. Meanwhile, Russia believes that it would only threaten Russia's ability to govern, Russia's ability to have a stake in the European sphere. So in that regard, I think both are holding up blocks for different reasons, but there is more at stake for Ukraine. You have to remember, they are the country that was invaded. They are the country that has had repeated Russian attacks on them. And it is in many ways up to Russia in order to stop civilian assaults.
Thank you very much indeed, Alexandra Sharp, there from Foreign Policy magazine, joining us here on Washington Watch. The US Defense Secretary continues to be mired by scandal and repeated leaks of sensitive military information. US allies are now concerned the Pentagon chief and his team are top targets for hackers, but US President Trump remains steadfast behind the defense chief. But for how long? This report by Disha Bakshi.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, whose name is rarely far from headlines, has more than a PR problem on his hands. After a tumultuous confirmation process where President Trump was forced to put his political capital on the line, Hexit, a former Fox News anchor, has led the Pentagon into chaos in just 3 months in office. The commander of the most powerful military in the world is known more as a drama magnet than a credible security voice. From leaking Yemen war plans with Atlantic editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg, sharing classified war details in a family group chat, allegedly briefing Elon Musk about war plans against China, and his own hand-picked aides turning against him, revealing the turmoil at the Pentagon, to more reports indicating that he had installed the unclassified messaging app Signal secretly in his Pentagon office. Hexit is attracting more scandal than one can sweep under the rug. Yet rather than being on defense mode, he remains steadfast on his ambitions to shake up the US defense establishment.
About the Signal chat controversy.
You know, what a big surprise that a few leakers get fired and suddenly a bunch of hit pieces come out from the same media that peddled the Russia hoax. Won't give back their Pulitzers. They got Pulitzers for a bunch of lies. Pulitzers for a bunch of lies. And on hoaxes, time and time and time again.
Despite Hexit's repeated blunders and leaks, President Trump so far is standing firmly behind him.
Do you remain confident in access? Do you remain confident in access?
Oh, totally.
President Trump.
Why do you even ask a question like that? We have recruitments that's at an all-time high. The spirit in the armed forces is fantastic. No, great confidence.
However, one must remember that everyone in a Trump cabinet operates on borrowed time. In his first term, the US president appointed 5 Pentagon chiefs in 4 years. Yet for now, Hexit seems safe, for he hasn't committed the most unpardonable mistake: trying to go against the president. Disha Bagchi for NDTV World.
Tensions between India and Pakistan ratcheting up. Indian and Pakistani forces have exchanged fire along the LOC, or line of control, which separates the two countries. A breakdown in relations between the two comes after a terror attack that left 26 tourists dead in a Kashmiri resort town. Now, India says the group who carried out the attack on April 24th is backed by Pakistan's military. New Delhi has suspended a critical decades-old water treaty with Pakistan. It's also expelled diplomats and shuttered a key border crossing. Pakistan has halted trade with India, including via a third country. It's a move that could hurt Pakistan more than India, is what some people say. So, will an economic strike help India cripple Pakistan without having to fire a single bullet? For more, I'm joined by Gaurav Sansanwal in Washington, D.C. Gaurav is with a leading think tank, the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thanks very much, Gaurav, for joining us here. Firstly, as far as trade goes, how much of an upper hand does India have against Pakistan?
Thanks so much for having me here, Allister. I think it's no surprise that Pakistan needs India more than India needs Pakistan. So definitely India has the upper hand there if we look at the trade balance between the two countries. The last year, the trade between the two countries was at $1 billion, which has since 2019 obviously come down from a high of $2.5 billion. But I think more relevant is to look at the trade composition. And so when we look at what exactly Pakistan imports from India, that's where we find the leverage that India enjoys, and that is in 3 or 4 different sectors which are really critical for the Pakistan economy. Number one is the pharma sector, where medicines are really a key thing. We've got fertilizers in there, which is directly which relates to the agricultural supplies of Pakistan. And then after that, we also have food and related items. Tea, especially, comes up heavily as well. So yeah, India has the upper hand here, and economic statecraft is the tone in all the countries, and so this will definitely hurt Pakistan more than it will hurt India.
So then, Gaurav, why is Pakistan doing this? What advantage does Pakistan really have in halting trade with India, which it relies on so heavily? Just wondering how it potentially proposes to fill that gap through China, perhaps?
Absolutely, Alistair. I think two asterisks here, right? One is that we've seen in the last few years the dependency on China has really increased, and this will be another opportunity for that to take place. The second thing is, since 2019, much of the trade was already disrupted, and as we know, businesses often find a way of adjusting to trade realities. And so we've seen through third-party countries like UAE, Singapore, Sri Lanka, trade still happening with Pakistan, which has already made some of those items more expensive for Pakistan. And so they are probably looking at this in a way where they're announcing that third countries will be also impacted, but that's not an easy job. Tracking third country supplies because of how complex supply chains are is a hard thing. So they're probably looking at it in two ways. One, yes, we could increase trade with China, but secondly, we could continue doing what we've been doing last few years, which is using third countries, which is why India would be looking at also working with these third countries to really make sure that the pressure points intensify
Right.
where the country is looking at. Yeah.
So, very quickly here, in about 30 seconds or so, to the question we posed earlier on this economic leverage that India has. Can India really cripple Pakistan without firing that single bullet?
Alistair, the dams that need to be constructed to take advantage of Indus Water Treaty will take years to come into picture. But trade is
The
an
water
area
treaty, which
where
has been
you can
suspended. Yep.
the water treaty, which has been suspended, will take time to operationalize. The gains there will take time to operationalize. By that metric, the trade gains happen instantly. So yes, I think the answer there would be that to a large extent, India will be able to disrupt the trade, but there are always optionalities because there are other countries that Pakistan can continue to trade with. So the diplomatic and other kinds of efforts that India is taking to isolate Pakistan would be just as critical to make sure the gains of trade stand and other countries don't come to the rescue. That's how India would be looking at it.
Thanks, Gaurav. Appreciate your time here on Washington Watch. In other news now, get ready to pay up. For the first time since the pandemic, the government will begin collecting student loans from those who've defaulted. Going into default refers to those students who haven't made their loans or paid their loans in 9 months. How many students are we talking about here in the US? Over 5 million, according to the Education Department. It's part of the White House's efforts to shut down Biden-era programs to forgive student loans. Let's take a closer look at the story. We're joined now by Durya Dinojwala. She has many years of experience in creditors' rights and bankruptcy litigation. Durya, thanks for your time here. Now, the Trump administration has said if students refuse to pay, they will seize their wages, pensions, or tax deductions and use those payments towards the unpaid loans. How practical is this, taking wages out of a person's paycheck and then using that to pay off those debts owed to the government? Duri, I think you're muted. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Good morning to your US viewers and good evening to the viewers in India. I think this is a huge problem because federal student aid is usually taken by people who are in the low income or the middle class Americans in the United States. It's a very easily available loan from the government where 100% of people who apply actually receive it. So having them paying this back. And the other issue is that student loans, unfortunately, cannot even be wiped out in bankruptcy. So even if you are unable to pay your debt, the problem is that student loans are exempt and they cannot be discharged unless the student proves that there is undue hardship to the court in a bankruptcy situation. So it is a problem. if people are not making enough money, or there have been students who actually took those loans and they dropped out of college. So they never got the degree, but now they have this huge student debt, which is out there. So technically,
sure, and
the
they may
government
also be
yes.
working in
Yes.
potentially these small jobs, Durya, and the government saying that they could potentially approach these employers, is what I understand, and get a
That
part
is
of that
correct.
paycheck to pay these debts. How is that going to work, really?
So my understanding is that garnishment, yes, those are called wage garnishments. We typically, creditor rights
Okay.
attorneys, we do wage garnishments, are very well known in the United States. So if you owe a judgment, yes, people can go out there and they can garnish your wages, but they can only do 15% of your disposable income. So they can't come after you. Let's say if you have a necessity, housing, food, medical bills, there are some things which are protected under the law, so they cannot touch that and garnish your wages. But you are absolutely correct that it is a high likelihood that if you are collectible, we call it in our bankruptcy world, is the person collectible or not? And if they're collectible, then yes, they can go after your wages for sure.
Thanks very much indeed. That's all the time we have for with you here, Durya. Thanks for joining us on Washington Watch. In other news now, Tesla CEO Elon Musk has announced plans to significantly reduce his involvement in Trump's Doge department, a controversial task force to slash federal spending. Musk's comments came as his EV maker Tesla saw earnings plunge with a 71% drop in profits. Following the announcement of him stepping back from Doge, Tesla shares soared by 5%, making the Tesla chief $8 billion richer. There is no indication yet on when Musk might step aside. "50 heads of state and 10 monarchs are expected to attend the funeral of Pope Francis on Saturday. That includes US President Trump and Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky, amongst many others. The pontiff died on Monday this week at the age of 88. He was the first non-European pope in nearly 13 centuries and the first ever from Latin America. Around the world, people are mourning the death of Pope Francis, including many Malayali Catholics at a church I visited in Virginia.
Risorgere con lui, aspergiamo il corpo del nostro Papa.
St. Jude's, one of many Syro-Malabar churches with history rooted in Kerala. And of course, we're nowhere near a Malabar coast. This one here is located an hour away from Washington, D.C. The mood inside St. Jude's is somber. With the passing of Pope Francis, it's a time of mourning for Catholics around the world.
Well, I remember seeing him in 2013 when I had my own visit to Vatican. One thing that I learned from his personally is this: he had a desire to be simple and desire to show care and mercy and love to poor.
As an Indian, I would say it was during his time that the great personalities like Mother Teresa, Evu Prasya from my state Kerala, Deva Sahayam Pilla, those great personalities were made as saints. So it really connects with me.
Pope did a lot of good things for the gay people. Church was not supporting the gay people. You know, he did not accept as the marriage into the church, but he blessed them. That really touched me.
He meant a lot of things, he meant so much to me. I feel kind of sad.
He stood up for the poor. He was a brave leader. He had true leadership through the Catholic community.
Are you going to miss him?
Yes.
After the funeral of Pope Francis, a group of 135 senior-most figures of the Catholic Church called cardinals will vote in secret for the next pope. It usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes even longer, to reach agreement on who will lead the Catholic Church next.
I'm from an Asian country. I really love to see someone who is of the same region.
I hope that if someone comes from Asia, that would be a great joy for us.
Pope Francis was very vocal about things that he did not like. Most recently, he was critical of the Trump administration as far as migrants and the crackdown on migrants are concerned. Do you hope that the next Pope will also be as vocal?
Well, each one is unique. Each one has got his own way of thinking and taking decisions.
Have a say in current world's situation is a need. So yes, I definitely would like the future Pope to be outspoken.
Amongst the frontrunners as the next Pope, Europeans, yes, but also in the mix, Africans and an Asian as well. For NDTV, Allister D'Souza, Chantilly, Virginia. That's it for Washington Watch. I'm Allister D'Souza.